Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 226 of the podcast, or you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube. Today's Saturday, January 30th. Coming at you a day earlier than usual since there's not a fight card tonight, and Jeff and I didn't have anything better to do. He texted me and asked if I wanted to do a podcast, so I was feeling a little groggy, so I had to down a couple of Kit Kat bars that I found left over from Halloween, because sweets last a long time in my house, because nobody really has a sweet tooth around here. That's neither here nor there. If you guys want to get a hold of some MMA on the Rocks gear, t-shirts, hoodies, and we do also have tank tops now available, which I just found out myself. I didn't even know we had tank tops until I went to go share the link today. And I saw we have MMA on the Rocks over the top under the influence tank tops. So if you want to go grab one of those, please do so through our friends at Team Reaper. That's reaper1.co. And you can also use the promo code MMA Rocks 10. That's MMA ROCKS 10 for those of you who are spelling challenged. So MMA Rocks 10 with our friends at reaper1.co. I'll also put the link in the show notes wherever you are viewing or listening to the show. As always, if you want to grab yourself some gear, you can grab MMA sparring gloves, jiu-jitsu gis, any of their other gear. They have some cool fight shorts and stuff like that. If you guys are into grappling or MMA, you train MMA. They have all that stuff. You can use the same promo code on anything throughout the website, so please remember to use that. And that's it on that end. Before we get into any MMA talk, which there's not a whole lot to talk about this week since there's no fight card, but we'll try and drag this thing out for you guys. Let me introduce my co-host all the way from New Jersey with a little bit of the sniffles, Jeff the Animal Wilson. Jeff, how you feeling, my friend?
Bill, I'm feeling all right. Definitely better than last week, because last Saturday I had a fever. But that broke Sunday. I just probably wasn't able to talk. And welcome back, Mark Fellows, always ready to join us. Bill.
He's drinking beer. It's like it's got to be 9 o'clock in the morning in Australia. What time is it over there, Mark? You're drinking beer already. You're a fucking champion.
Bill, speaking of champion, I have a question for you, Mark Fellows. Do you know who That's What I Reckon is? Bill, he's this YouTuber from Australia. And he's been doing like these cooking videos during quarantine, and he's all like, he swears a lot and he calls everybody champion, which is, he's entertaining for sure. I really enjoy his videos. But anyway, we're not here to plug
Shannon Briggs. You ever watch Shannon Briggs on Instagram? Let's go, champ. Let's go, champ.
Dude, I love him. Oh, man. Oh, it's 1:37 p.m., Bill. He's fine.
Oh, I was way off. For some reason, I thought they're in like the same time zone as Japan. But I suck at geography, Jeff. So
it's not your fault they teach it in schools anymore.
Yeah, they don't, do they? Nope. They took that out. But they did when I was a kid, so I can't really use that excuse.
Oh, see, if you hadn't said that, I would have just been like, oh, you just never learned it. But you did learn it, Bill. What the hell?
If somebody asked me, like, where's Australia, I'd be like, oh, fucking that way. I don't know. Like, if you keep going that way, you'll get there.
Yeah,
eventually.
You keep flying past California, and you'll get there.
Speaking of YouTubers, Jeff, I guess we could just talk about it now. It's not like we had a whole lot to talk about. We could talk about the fight that was booked between Ben Askren and Jake Paul. So a wrestler against a YouTuber in a boxing match.
Well, everybody's Ben Askren for it.
That's pretty good. You're ready to be a dad, Jeff. You might be one already. We don't know. You might get that knock on the door one day. But look, nobody was a bigger advocate for Ben Askren than me. I was calling for him to get into the UFC for years. Like even even before he went over to what at the time is one championship and is now one FC, I wanted to see him in the UFC. I wanted to see how he would do. I defended him because, you know, a lot of his biggest criticisms were that he wasn't finishing fights. He was just laying on guys. That wasn't true. He was absolutely finishing fights. I was even calling at one point for Ben Askren to fight GSP because I believe they were the two best welterweights on the planet, and I wanted to see that fight. You know, I kind of changed my opinion on that once we did see Ben Askren come to the UFC, but I think it was a little bit too late. By the time he got there, he was like already 34 years old. He had already announced his retirement. Obviously, he had a bad hip because he just had a hip replacement or some type of hip surgery, major hip surgery. I was such a huge Ben Askren supporter for such a long time. I wouldn't even call myself a fan. I just, you know, I liked the way he fought. I thought he fought smart. He never got hit a lot, but that was largely due to his wrestling. I was never a big advocate for him because of his striking acumen. So as far as him taking a like watching him box doesn't interest me. I was a big supporter of seeing him in the UFC because of what he could do as a wrestler. I was a fan of his amateur wrestling career as well. I mean, they called him Funky for a reason because he had a very unorthodox style and some very unique takedowns and just like a crazy strong guy, like a kind of guy that once he gets a hold of you, he's going to fling you around. Not known for his boxing, you know. It's like saying like, oh, hey, we're all going to go to an Irish restaurant. And immediately you start thinking like, oh, great, we're going to have Guinness and Jameson and Tullamore Dew. And they're like, wait, this is a dry Irish restaurant. So like, you just have to have the food. Now, we Irish are not known for our cuisine, Jeff. So if you tell me I'm going to an Irish restaurant and I can't even have a Smithwick's, like, what's the point? I'm going to have boiled potatoes and cabbage. Like, that's kind of how I feel about seeing Ben Askren box.
Yeah, Bill, but I mean, if you think about it, it puts him on basically the same level as Logan Paul or Jake Paul or Jake Logan, whoever the fuck he's fighting. I don't know who these guys are. He
Ben Askren versus Jake Logan. One night only.
Oh, man. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Bill. Ben Askren's probably the only reason I'd watch this fight is to see if he can still walk. I mean, I don't know if I think getting into the UFC, I don't think he could walk in a straight line anymore, which is concerning.
Dude, he's going to come down the aisle like Willy Wonka, or he's going to have the cane. He's going to be walking with the cane until he gets right up to the ring, and he's going to do the somersault like this. And that's going to be like the big slam bang finish. And then he gets in there and I don't know how he's going to do, man. Jake Paul's a big guy. I think in his last match, he weighed in 189 pounds. I know Ben Askren's pretty big. He fought in the UFC. He fought his whole career at 170, I believe. He may have taken a couple of fights at middleweight. And this kid is, you know, a lot younger than him. Ben Askren and I are the same age, you know, and I get in there still, and I spar quite a bit. And when I spar guys that are like 24 years old, like I know where I stand with them. You know, I gotta be on my bicycle. I'm not gonna beat them to the punch. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm just like surviving. You know, I'll land on them occasionally, but you know, I know where I stand. And Ben and I are the same age. The thing I do like about it is that Ben's going to get a nice payday out of this. He's already come out and said, he hasn't said how much he's going to make, but he said he's going to make more than he's made for any single fight in his whole career. So I am happy for him in that regard. And a lot of people are talking about it, you know, apparently, Conor McGregor turned down this fight for obvious reasons. I guess Dylan Dennis was the next logical one, which I wouldn't actually mind seeing that fight because they have like some personal beef, like they're Eskimo brothers or something like that, where they have like one of them is dating the other's extra. I don't know. But there is some kind of like organic heat there. Like, I don't understand why a 36-year-old Ben Askren wants to get in there with a 24-year-old kid that just killed an NBA star whose name I can't even remember. But here we are. So I don't know, Jeff. Who do you favor in this bout?
I think the real winner is whoever doesn't watch it. I think that's the real winner. It's one of those games, Bill. Like the real way to win is not playing. I think it's one of those situations.
What if Ben Askren comes out and just starches this kid in the first round?
That would be fantastic as well.
Just like stings him and puts him down like like Jake Paul did to that ball dribbler that he did a few weeks back. Here's the thing, like a 24-year-old kid who has, basically like unlimited income. Like anytime he needs money, all he has to do is post anything on the internet and he makes millions of dollars. So he's got a lot of disposable income. He's got a lot of free time. I don't know what he does. He makes a video and then exercises, takes a nap, I don't know. He has like Joe Frazier brought back from the dead to coach him in boxing. And like, that's all he's doing. He's just boxing and being a young, celebrity, being on social media all day. Ben Askren, yes, he's been doing MMA a long time, but he never really trained striking to be a striker. He trained striking to set up his takedowns, and he was very good at that. But what's he going to do when he gets inside on somebody and he's not able to, drop for a double leg or drop for a body lock or, utilize the things that he does best? I worry about how it's going to go for him. As an MMA fan, I guess I have to be in the corner of the MMA guy. But, if I had to pick somebody to represent the sport of MMA as a striker, Ben Askren would be, far from my first pick.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Bill, I think that getting back to the MMA, I'm a little, just because I have nothing to add about what you said. I don't know who this Logan Jacob is or whatever.
Jake Logan.
Yeah, him. Anyway, still don't know who he is. But anyway, and I'm not gonna research him. I don't care. But Bill, I'm a little surprised there's no UFC card this weekend, and there's one next weekend, because next weekend is the Super Bowl, which is gonna be in your neck of the woods, actually. Thanks to the one and only Thomas Edward Patrick Brady.
Is that his real name?
Yeah.
Oh man,
his full name.
He's Irish as fuck, huh?
Oh yeah, dude.
Wow. Well,
He's also the greatest quarterback of all time.
Well, I wouldn't want to go to his restaurant if they're not serving alcohol. I was actually just Tom Brady lives over in Clearwater Beach. I was somewhere near his house, and I didn't even know that. Somebody told me like, "Oh, Tom Brady lives over there, like down a few blocks." Yeah, I think it's awesome, man. This is the first time in history that the home team, like where they're hosting the Super Bowl, that team made it to the Super Bowl. This has never happened before. And yeah, it is all because of Tom Brady, I suppose. The guy's incredible. I mean, I don't see how you could say he's not the greatest quarterback of all time. He's got 6 Super Bowl rings, been to the Super Bowl 10 times. This will be 11. I might be making some of these numbers up, but regardless, like nobody else has come close to what this guy has done, right?
Yeah, this is the Super Bowl next weekend is going to be number 10 actually. So he's
Yeah,
six
that's what I
and
meant.
9. So pretty good numbers. He's also the youngest quarterback to be on the team that's also where the Super Bowl is going to be held.
Wait,
So
what?
because Bill, if this is the first time that a team is
Oh,
having
I
a Super
see.
Bowl in their home stadium, that makes Tom Brady the youngest quarterback to host the Super
And
Bowl
what?
in his own backyard.
What? He's like 42, right?
Yeah,
40.
yeah,
Oh shit.
42,
So
43.
he lives like a super disciplined life, from what I've heard. Like he's very disciplined with his diet and like exercise routine and all this. He goes to like the Bahamas and gets stem cells or something. I don't every off season. I don't know. I don't know what he does. Like I'm speculating there. I assume he gets that kind of stuff done, but he might just go like jogging on the beach. I don't know. But yeah, it's awesome, man. It's awesome for Tampa. I was driving down the street and I saw like all these little pop-up tents set up, people selling like Buccaneers jerseys and flags you could hang on your car. And I see a lot of like Buccaneers decorations and stuff, which like it's awesome, man, because I live here. It's cool to see that kind of energy, but at the same time, I'm like, wait a second. I haven't seen a single Buccaneers fan like since I moved here 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Maybe it's 5 years ago I moved here. And I didn't see anybody rooting for the Buccaneers when I first came here, Jeff. I went to a football game the first year I moved here, and it was the Buccaneers versus the Raiders, and the stadium wasn't even half full. And I would say 60 to 70% of the fans in attendance were rooting for the Raiders. So it's kind of cool to see this energy, but like, and it's weird too, because Tampa's a hockey town. Like people love the Tampa Bay Lightning here, and there's been support for them like nonstop. I know they won the championship recently, but like people have always been supporting them. But now the Buccaneers are in the championship, and all of a sudden everybody's a Buccaneers fan when I didn't see any of them rooting for them all along. Maybe I'm just oblivious and I haven't paid attention to it, but I know I've never seen people selling Buccaneers t-shirts on the side of the road before. That's definitely a new one.
Hey, I dig it though, man. I think that's cool. That the whole town, the whole community is getting hyped up for this. It's a huge deal, man. Um, you know, I don't care for the Giants or the Jets. You know me, but I'm a Patriots fan. But if the Super Bowl were in Giant Stadium and maybe the Giants made it that year, I'd be pretty excited. Just because of the energy and stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think it's weird that the UFC are putting on a card next weekend when there's all this hype for the Super Bowl, when they could have put it on this weekend when, I mean, tomorrow's the WWE Royal Rumble, but I haven't heard too much noise about that. So I thought it was interesting.
I didn't even know that was happening. And Mark Fellow says he's not an NFL fan because too many serious injuries. And I haven't watched much football in the past few years, just because it became too time consuming. Because I used to watch like every game, so that you for 17 weeks in a row, that's your entire Sunday, that's your Monday night, that's your Thursday night. It just became too time consuming for me to keep up with. I did enjoy it for a period of time. I like watching football when I'm around other people who like football. But with the current pandemic and everything, I don't plan on going to a Super Bowl party or anything like that. So I don't know if I'll even be watching. But in regards to the injuries, Jeff, I had a chiropractor when I was living back in New York. Shout out to Dr. Steve Herman, by the way, the only chiropractor I've ever experienced that did a phenomenal job and was able to fix a lot of the problems I had. He was talking to me because he had worked on some Giants players, I guess, and he said that the problem is that these guys keep trying to get bigger and stronger and faster, and basically like their skeletons can't support it. Like the amount of muscle that they put on, and like the amount of like explosive, like fast twitch power that they need to perform. You're basically, your body isn't capable of doing that. Like your skeleton can't handle it. Like, yeah, you keep putting more muscle and more muscle on yourself, but at a certain point, your skeleton's like, hey, we can't support all this. And that's why, you get all the ACL tears, you get all the back injuries, you get all of the, the muscle tears and the legs and the ligaments and everything, because it's just like too much for the body. Like you're not meant to be 310 pounds when you're 5'9", so like and that always kind of stuck with me. I don't know if he's right, but like it sounds right. Your body is only designed to handle so much muscle mass and so much whatever. So if you figure out a way to, enhance that, like at a certain point, like being a human being has to be a factor.
Yeah, for sure. I used to weightlift when I was younger, Bill. And one doctor told me that when you start weightlifting, your bones will get a little bit more dense to keep up with how much muscle you're putting on. But what you're saying makes sense too. Everything's finite, so
Mm-hmm.
you know your bone density is only gonna get you so far before you start getting injured. And we see these bodybuilders, and not to say that anybody takes steroids in the NFL, but from like the steroid specials that I've watched, just like on a night when I was bored, the body is meant to, like you said, be framed a certain way. And when you start adding on too much muscle, where your bones can't keep up and get as dense as they need to, at the same rate that you're putting on this muscle, it makes sense that you'd start getting injured and stuff. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and also as a fan of sports in general, I've seen certain soccer players. This one Belgian player comes to mind. He's been built like a tank since he was like 16,
Mm-hmm.
and he just had a huge growth spurt. He was playing like at the top level of European football when he was 16, and he was getting injured all the time. Just like
Mm-hmm.
you said, just because his body was growing so fast. Like now that he's older, it's kind of like evened out, where like his bones are like where they should be in comparison to his muscle density, and he's playing great soccer. He's not getting injured. But when he was 16, 17, he'd spend a lot of time watching the games, like you said, because of all that.
Yeah, and it makes sense too, because even if your bones do get a little bit more dense to support the muscle, you can't change the size of your ligaments. Like there's nothing you can do. Like I guess you could strengthen the ligaments and everything, but they're still going to be the same size. So you have this giant quadricep, you have this giant hamstring, you have this giant calf muscle, and it's holding up this massive upper body. But that ACL is still the same size as if you were 170 pounds or whatever your body was meant to be. So all that extra muscle is putting so much pressure, and that's why you see all these guys blowing out their ACLs in the NFL and the NBA too. I mean, I know they put on more lean muscle, but you see a lot of injuries with those guys too. And if there was contact in the NBA, like there damn well should be, you'd probably see a lot more injuries. I would watch basketball, Jeff, if it was full contact. If you could just like run right into somebody, I'm all for it. Like, but I can't watch these sports where the guys like fall down and pretend to get hurt to get a benefit in the game. Like that's not me. I'd rather like not get knocked down and lose the game, but that's me. That's, I come from wrestling, where you got to stay on your feet at all costs.
Yeah, for sure. So, Bill, speaking of wrestling, we got an awesome card coming up. which is featuring one of my favorite wrestlers, one of my hometown boys, Bill. Frankie the Answer Edgar, who is not in the main event, but he is in the co-main event. So I'm excited about that.
I was wondering how you're going to tie in the wrestling segue. Nicely done, Jeff. Nicely done. You're gonna get your bonus this month.
Oh man. But yeah, Bill. I'm really excited for this card coming up, man. I mean, I know that the timing is a little bit poor because it's, same weekend as the Super Bowl. So maybe it's past some of our fans' minds. But Bill, this card top to bottom looks fantastic. Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov in the main event. But Bill, I don't know, man. What does Alistair Overeem have left to prove?
I think he hasn't won a UFC championship yet, right?
Right, but he's won everything else, everything under the sun. I mean,
so you just answered your own question.
I don't think he has to prove anything, man. I mean,
I don't know. I think to cement his legacy, first of all, I know he wants to reach 100 fights. I think that's like a goal of his. So in MMA, he's 47-18. If you add up, all his kickboxing, K1 experience, he's somewhere in the mid 90s, 95, 96 fights. For some reason, that 100 fights is like a goal for him, which is amazing. I mean, he's a heavyweight, so he's still young for a heavyweight, and I think he's 59. No, but I think it is that UFC title, and I think, especially in the landscape of this UFC heavyweight division where, the longest streak of a heavyweight champion is like 3 defenses. And that was by the current champ, Stipe Miocic. That belt changes hands quite a bit. I think it's a realistic goal still. If he's impressive with a knockout over Volkov, and then, Stipe and Ngannou are going to fight, and then supposedly John Jones is going to get the winner of that. In the meantime, if Overeem, gets another impressive victory, like, maybe in a rematch over Rosenstrike or something like that, or a big win over a Curtis Blades, he could be right in line for that title, and it could coincide with his 100 fight goal. Maybe he'll be fighting for that championship on his 100th fight. It's possible, just like people didn't expect the Buccaneers to make it to the Super Bowl the year that the Super Bowl is in Tampa. Maybe Alistair Overeem could be fighting for that coveted UFC championship for his 100th, combat sports contest.
All right, Bill, you convinced me. I'll stick around to see if Overeem can do it. Only because it would be the first heavyweight to basically win in every major organization. Because I believe he did have a belt in Pride, right?
Yeah. So he won the K1 Grand Prix. I believe he was the Pride. Shit, I don't know what they called it because the weight classes were different in Pride as well.
Yeah,
because like
they're in kilograms or whatever.
Yeah, but not only that, like middleweight was like what we know as light heavyweight, and it was all mixed up like that. But I know he was fighting at what we now consider to be light heavyweight over in Pride, and I do believe he was a champion there. But yeah, I think it's interesting enough to, see how it plays out, especially because he's been able to adapt, through coming from Japan to the UFC and adapting to the cage, which a lot of guys were not able to do. Guys like Crow Cop, guys like Shogun, guys like Vanderlei, who came over and did well, but they didn't come over and dominate like everybody expected them to. They came over and they did okay. But Man, I don't see where, and I hate to make statements like this because I don't like to make picks on the show, Jeff, because I don't want people like putting their money on things based off of what I say, because I would just feel too guilty about that. But I don't see where Volkov beats Overeem. I think Overeem's got more power. He's definitely more dangerous with the knockouts. He's more experienced. Volkov has a lot of experience, but not as much high level experience. I mean, he was fighting and losing to guys in Bellator for a little while, and then he was over in like M1 before he came to the UFC, and he strung together some wins against guys who were on their way out of the UFC, like Roy Nelson, Fabricio Verdum. And then he had that crazy knockout loss against Derek Lewis where he was beating him up for 4 minutes and 50 seconds and then got knocked out right at the end of the fight. Lost, and his last two fights, he lost to Curtis Blades, and then he knocked out Walt Harris, and that was in October of 2020. So it's been well over a year since he's fought. I don't see where he beats Overeem, because Overeem is very well rounded. He can grapple. I feel like he's stronger than Volkov. I feel like he hits harder, and he's a very technical striker. A K1 Grand Prix world champion. Hard to argue with those credentials. I just don't see what Volkov's going to be able to do, especially in a 5-round fight. But give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, I was feeling a little bit differently. But now that you listed some of Volkov's recent fights, it's hard to argue with that, man. I don't see Overeem finishing Volkov, but I definitely do see it probably not going Volkov's way. I would even say a close decision. Maybe a split decision, maybe. But I'm leaning more towards a unanimous decision for Overeem. Like you said, man, super technical striker, a very good grappler. And I feel like that is because of how good his striking is. People underestimate his grappling, and you can't do that with Overeem, dude.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a bunch of submission wins. He can grapple off of his back. Super high level grappling. I'd love to see him like if he retires from the UFC, I'd love to see him at like a submission underground. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, just so people can see his grappling in a vacuum. He's a very good grappler. And he just doesn't need it most of the time. So yeah, dude. It's hard to argue with you, man.
I mean, he has had submission wins, but he hasn't had one since 2009, as I'm looking now. But let me tell you about Overeem's last few fights. So his last 5 fights, in his last fight, he knocked out Augustus Sakai in the 5th round. So he's got finishing power through 5 rounds. Before that, he knocked out Walt Harris. Before that was the Rosenstrike fight where he was dominating the fight the entire time. And then, Rosenstrike had that crazy punch that busted his lip wide open. And it was kind of a controversial stoppage, but also a good stoppage by Dan Miragliotta. It's just a shame that there was only 4 seconds left. Otherwise, Overeem's guaranteed winning that decision. Before that, he knocked out Alexei Olenek. And before that, he knocked out Sergey Pavlovich. Now, all of these performances, very impressive, but even more impressive for the fact that coming off of back-to-back losses against Curtis Blades and Francis Ngannou, a lot of people were saying, like, that's it. Overeem is done. He's cooked. He's been doing this too long. And then he goes and puts together 5 performances like that, where he won 4 of them, and he should have won the 5th one if it went 4 seconds longer. That's why I think Overeem has much more momentum going into this main event. And I think he just brings more tools to the table and more experience. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, I actually, once you started mentioning his last couple fights, I went to Wikipedia and looked up his record. And yeah, Bill, make a very good argument for Overeem. It's kind of hard to see him struggling too much with Volkov. Just comparing their bodies of work. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Lost to Ngannou, got TKO'd by Curtis Blades, and
Hmm.
then boom, won 4 finishes in 5 fights, and one that 4 seconds away from winning that one. Um, yeah, okay, Bill, you convinced me. You have changed my mind.
All
I think
right.
Kareem's gonna have I wouldn't say an easy night, but I I think Volkov has to do something spectacular. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Overeem's a tough guy to finish. Like, yeah, there was the Ngannou punch where he knocked Overeem's head to the moon. But there's only one Ngannou. There's nobody else is doing that to Overeem. So let's move on to this co-main event, which I'm the most excited for this fight, Jeff, because I'm always nervous to see Frankie Edgar fight at this stage because he's 39 years old, and he keeps moving down in weight. And as we know, like the lower in weight you go, the shorter the shelf life. That's just the way it is. Like heavyweight, you can fight till you're 60, 70, 75. Bantamweight, like there's not a lot of guys around. Like, Uriah Faber pushed that envelope like as far as it could go, fighting into his 40s. But he's the exception, not the rule. So here comes Frankie Edgar, 39 years old. He is undefeated at bantamweight thus far. He's coming off of the win over Pedro Munoz, where he looked so good. He's back to old school Frankie Edgar tactics, mixing up his boxing and his wrestling, which is that's his trademark. I've always loved the way that Frankie was able to mix in his boxing footwork with his wrestling footwork, which is a lot trickier than you would think. A lot of guys can box really well. A lot of guys can wrestle really well. Not a lot of them can combine them the way that Frankie Edgar does. And I think he's the best at that ever. And I'll stand by that until somebody can prove me otherwise. But if we're going by the same rules, Jeff, and we're looking at the last 5 fights, so he's got the win over Pedro Munoz, but then he's got that knockout loss to Chan Sung Jung. He's got that loss to Max Holloway, where he just didn't look like himself, and Holloway kind of ran away with it, which is looking a little more acceptable given the way Max Holloway has looked lately. Then he had the win over Cub Swanson, and then he had the knockout loss to Brian Ortega. So in his last 5 fights, he's 2-3. His opponent, on the other hand, I'm going to pull up Cory Sandhagen here in a minute. Obviously, coming off of that spectacular knockout over Marlon Morris. And then there was that quick submission loss to Aljamain Sterling in the 2nd minute of the 1st round. But before that, unanimous decision over Rafael Assunção, split decision over John Lineker, which I was live for that fight in attendance. I still think John Lineker should have edged that decision over Sandhagen, but it went the way it went. And then a submission of Mario Bautista. So if we're looking at the last 5 fights, Sandhagen 4-1, Edgar 2-3, but 4 of Edgar's last 5 fights were at featherweight, and so far he's looked good at bantamweight, 1-0. So give me your thoughts. Now that I threw some numbers your way, Jeff. Have you been crunching those numbers as I've been spitting them out to you?
All right, Bill, I got to be the Skip Bayless of this episode here. All right, Bill, we can't. This is the only time where the numbers, we got to put an asterisk next to them, okay? Because look at who Cory Sandhagen fought in his Rafael Assunção, who has not fought since like UFC 200. John Lineker, who probably, arguably could have beaten him. Mario Bautista, who I hadn't even heard of until he fought Cory Sandhagen. I'll give him the Aljo fight because Aljo has been on a tear except for when he ran into Marlon Morris. But other than that, Aljo has been chewing up this bantamweight division. So I won't count that against him, Bill. But I mean, that Marlon Moraes fight, Marlon Moraes he's had a couple of tough scraps, man. I think Henry Cejudo finished him. I might be mistaken on that, but Marlon Moraes, he hasn't looked himself in a while, so I don't know how much you can count that one. Me personally, I'm a little bit biased towards Frankie Edgar. So Cory Sandhagen, his body of work in his last 5 fights, a little bit questionable. And as for Frankie Edgar, yes, he has 3 losses in his last 5 fights. But look at who they were too. The Korean zombie, Max Holloway, who annihilated Calvin Kattar a couple of weeks back. Brian Ortega, who was on a tear at that point in his career up until right before he met with Max Holloway,
Yeah.
And got chewed up by him. So I don't know, dude. I mean, Frankie Edgar, yes, he has 3 losses, but I think we have to put an asterisk next to those 3 losses because that's a murderer's row in the featherweight division, dude. I mean, those are like the top 3 guys in the featherweight division.
Asterisks at the bottom. Murderer's row.
I mean, dude, those are 3 titans in the featherweight division. And Cory Sandhagen, he's been on a tear himself, but it's questionable, dude. I mean, that Rafael Assunção fight, I mean, I didn't think Assunção had a chance, dude. I didn't think he had a snowball's chance in hell, dude. I mean, the last time that I thought he would win a fight was when he fought TJ Dillashaw at UFC 200, dude. Like, other than that, I actually forgot he was on the roster.
Which is crazy because he was such a monster early on.
Yeah, like I don't know what happened.
USADA.
Oh, right. That's right. Can't use the IVs anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
That dude who got banned from who got fired by the UFC last week. The guy with the duffel bag.
Oh, Atman Azaitar.
Yeah, I think that duffel bag was filled with IVs and pulled pork sandwiches.
Probably some Pez dispensers. I imagine they're hard to come by in Abu Dhabi.
I think they're hard to come by here. I haven't seen one of those in years.
They still sell them. Because like my daughter's always eyeballing them, but like she's still too little for those little candies. Like she'll choke on them, but she always sees like it's a little toy, and she kind of knows it's candy. But yeah, man, I love this fight. Because I like Sandhagen, but I love Frankie Edgar. He's one of my all-time favorites. I will always be a fan of that guy. He could keep fighting until he's 45 and lose 12 fights in a row like BJ Penn did, and I will still love Frankie Edgar.
Well, Bill, I'm glad you feel that way, because speaking of BJ Penn, first off, I was on bjpenn.com to look up some stuff for us to talk about, and the site crashed. So he basically did to his website what he did to his car, apparently.
And his career.
Yeah, and his career. Bill, fill us in here. What happened with BJ Penn? Why is he in the news this time?
Well, from what I heard, he got arrested for a DUI. He just can't stay out of trouble. Like, the guy basically runs Hawaii. So, first of all, he was BJ Penn, a lot of people may not know, was born into money. Did not need to fight. But fighting is just something that Hawaiians love to do. I mean, we see this evidence of this still through Max Holloway. Went on to become one of the baddest motherfuckers in the history of bad motherfuckers. Like, BJ Penn was like the guy you did not want your favorite fighter to fight against, because he was just crushing people in 2 weight classes, crazy knockouts, insane flexibility. He would fight wrestlers like Matt Hughes, who would have one of his ankles held up over his head. and couldn't take this guy down. He was like a fucking wizard in the cage. And I think a lot of that got lost because, you know, he was notorious for not training hard. When he did train hard, he would beat the fuck out of people, like what he did to Diego Sanchez in one of his last great performances. You know, where he broke Diego Sanchez's skull in half. And then I think that's when the aliens got inside of Diego Sanchez's brain, and inhabited there. And that's where they've stayed until this day. I just made that story up now, but it sounds like pretty in line with reality. So yeah, just kept fighting and kept asking Dana, like, hey, give me more fights. Meanwhile, losing fights to bouncers outside of strip clubs and like, you know, going viral, getting knocked out, you know, in the street. And I don't know, where was I going with all this, Jeff? In any case, got arrested for DUI, and it's just such a shame to see, man, because here's a guy who, like, it wasn't your typical rags to riches story, because like he was, you know, he came from a wealthy family. He didn't need to fight, but he became good at it anyway, which I think was a cool story. And then, you know, threw it all away and continues to do so, continues to be his own worst enemy. It's horrible to see. But I really hope like somebody's able to get a hold of him and like, you know, wring his neck a little bit and shake some sense into him, because, you know, you don't want to see a guy go out like that.
Yeah, for sure. But Bill, I mean, if he was born into money, I mean, he might not have any actual skills other than fighting. He's probably never needed them before.
That's very true. That's very true. It's probably, and this is a sad thing, is that we see a lot of fighters, like, they don't know what to do with themselves. You know, anybody who's done something for too long. Like, I was just listening to Mark Calloway on Joe Rogan. I don't know if you listened to this one, Jeff. So Mark Calloway, of course, the Undertaker from WWE. He's been doing a lot of interviews lately, and I've been consuming a lot of them because, you know, the Undertaker came up like through my childhood. I think he debuted when I was like 5 or 6 years old. This guy was fucking scary as hell. You know, I didn't know. Not only did I not know wrestling was scripted, I didn't know he wasn't actually a dead guy. Like, yeah, that's how young I was when this guy started. But he was talking about, like, yeah, I was in the WWE for 30 years. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do now. So, but he was being like, you know, cognitive about it. He was like, yeah, you know, I just got to figure it out, see what I'm passionate about now. But a lot of fighters are like, that's all they know. It's like a guy like BJ Penn, he's only been fighting for however many years. He's like, I need to fight somebody at the strip club. I need to fight the cop that's trying to arrest me while I'm driving drunk. I need to fight my wife. I need to fight my children. Like some guys just can't snap out of it. And that's really sad to see. You know, especially for guys who should be celebrated for their accomplishments of what they did inside the cage. But, you know, that's the harsh reality of this sport, man. You know, we see stuff like, you know, the Spencer Fisher story that came out where he's really suffering from CTE and he doesn't know, you know, like how he's going to provide for his family because he's got so much brain damage. You know, that's a guy who put on so many great performances and was one of the first, like, really well-rounded fighters to come around and always put on exciting fights. But, you know, now he's having a really hard go of it. And that's the harsh reality for a lot of these guys, is like, it's really like a lot of other mainstream sports. Like, there's the 1% of athletes that come out of it and figure out what else to do with them, with their lives, and are able to excel at that. You know, it's a pretty rare thing, and it's kind of sad. I know I went off on a tangent there, Jeff, but why don't you interject here?
Yeah, Bill, way to bum me out, man. Hopefully everything works out for all these guys, you know. Open up a coffee shop or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, BJ Penn, I'm sure he could coach.
I don't know how well he makes a latte. So yeah, maybe he could coach. But I don't know. Like if you're like an up and coming athlete, you're gonna listen to BJ Penn, where he's gonna be like, yeah, you could go run 5 miles or don't. I never did.
Oh man.
I used to just go and knock guys out,
Poor baby J, man.
I know. The guy's been through enough.
Oh,
How
man.
dare you, Jeff? Yeah, before we get into the rest of this card, let me talk about what I've been sipping over here, Jeff, this whole time, because people are always curious. Henry McKenna. This is a product of the Heaven Hill Distillery, which is one of my favorite distilleries in Louisville, Kentucky. So Henry McKenna, the regular bourbon, one of my go-tos, like best bang for your buck, because you can get a bottle of it for like $15 and it's delicious. This is the 10-year bottled in bond. So of course, bottled in bond, you guys have heard me talk about it countless times. It's an actual law in the United States that in order to put bottled in bond on a bourbon label, it has to be aged a minimum of 4 years. This one was aged for 10, and it has to be bottled at 100 proof, which this one was bottled at exactly 100 proof. It's a small batch. It can be hard to come by. It can be jacked up in price. If you see it for $70, $80, pass it by. If you see it for $50, grab it immediately and take one home. It is a delicious bourbon. It's got like it tastes like a melted vanilla ice cream, Jeff. If you took like a vanilla bean ice cream and just like let it sit out on the counter and like turn into soup and like took a sip of it, that's almost what this bourbon tastes like. It's got those great caramel notes that you get in bourbon and that like kind of like toasted cereal vibe, but like the sweetness of the vanilla really comes through on this one, and I really quite enjoy it. My buddy Matt Temple turned me onto this bourbon initially because he brought a bottle over it brought a bottle of it over for a fight night one time, and it was so good. And then my brother actually gave me this bottle for Christmas, and I just opened it last night, and as you can see, I've done some pretty significant damage to it. So also a shout out to my brother Rob for that much appreciated Christmas gift. But that's it. Henry McKenna, 10-year bottled in bond. Definitely gets the MMA on the Rocks stamp of approval. So that's that, Jeff. You got any feedback on that review, or you want to get into the rest of this card?
No, it sounds really good, dude. It sounds like a good slow sipper. So that'll make for a good weekend. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good weekend. Had some good time hanging out with the family, talking to you, talking about some fights. We got Marion Renault and Macy Chiasson. I don't have too much on this one, Jeff. Macy 6-1. Marion Renault, you got to respect her. One of the older female fighters on the roster. Still getting in there. I need to look up how old she is now. No, I said that.
Yeah, she's got to be like in her early to mid 30s.
Yeah, she's 43, Jeff.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Good
she's
on her, dude.
she's from Belize. So, she's got that like youthful Belizean. It's Belizean, right?
I'm not sure, Bill.
I think
I've
it
never
is.
met anybody from Belize.
I'm pretty sure it's Belizean. Belize it or not, Jeff. I think that's true. Yeah. Never been finished. But not a whole lot of fights either. She's only 9-6. 3 losses in a row. All right, now that I've looked at this, I'm not excited for this fight. And Macy Kiasin 6-1. All right, Alexandre Pantoja and Manel Kape. I'm not familiar with Manel. Pantoja is a pretty exciting fighter. These guys seem pretty evenly matched. 22-5, 15-4. Let's see. Manel is coming from Ryzen. So he's had 7, 8, 9 fights in Ryzen. All right, so I'm kind of interested for this one. And he's got a bunch of knockouts over there. Last 3 fights all ended in knockout. All right, this is a fun fight, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Anytime Alexandre Pantoja fights, I get excited for it. I think he's one of these guys who can really bring some excitement and breathe some life into the flyweight division.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm not the biggest fan of the flyweight division, but I'm actually really interested in this fight. Here's another one, and I think I'm going to make this my sleeper pick, Jeff. Cody Stamann and Andre Ewell. So Cody Stamann coming off of an impressive victory. He's a guy who can really push the pace, great wrestling, good power. And Andre Ewell is a guy who I had really high hopes for when he came into the UFC because they called him Mr. Highlight. He had a lot of impressive wins, but then like he kind of met like the upper end of the division. Like Nathaniel Wood submitted him, and then Chito Vera knocked him out. So he had a tough time. Even his last 2 wins were split decisions, but he still has that ability to have that flashy submission or that flashy knockout. So I still think there's potential for Ewell. And I think it's an interesting match with Cody Stamann. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew Ewell, I think he's kind of well rounded. But like you said, man, once he hit the upper side, some of the higher ranks of the bantamweight division, I think he started to run into a couple of problems. I think Cody Stamann's definitely going to be, a tough matchup for him. But if he can do well, I think it's going to go a long way to boost his confidence, morale, and ranking. But yeah, I think there's a great pick for a sleeper. By the way, there's a really good pick.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun fight. Next, we got Beneil Dariush and Diego Ferreira. Dariush, man, quietly been on a tear, and finishing people. Knocked out Scott Holtzman, knocked out Jakar Close in that crazy fight. That was like he almost got knocked out, I think, twice, and then came back and knocked out Jakar Close out of nowhere. And that was what sparked that famous meme of like Daniel Cormier like leaning on Joe Rogan and Rogan with his arm around John Anik, where they're all going crazy. Yeah, everybody's seeing that meme. I wish I had a producer right now who could just pull that up on the screen. I could probably do it myself, but I'm not going to. You guys be your own Jamie and fucking Google it shit. You won't have Google on your phone. Look it up. Look up the Joe Rogan Daniel Cormier meme. Before that, submitted Frank Camacho. Then he submitted Drew Dober, and then a unanimous decision over Thiago Moises. So if we're looking at the last 5 fights, Beneil Dariush, very impressive. I don't know if he made some changes or whatever he did because, he bounced back from those losses to Alexander Hernandez, the draw with Evan Dunham, and the loss to Ed Barbosa back in 2017. He's been on a fucking tear, man. Looking really impressive. But, don't sleep on Diego Ferreira either. 17-2, only finished 1 time. He's on a 6-fight win streak. Just submitted Anthony Pettis in his last fight, but that was a year ago, January 2020. Then he beat Maribek Taisimov, beat Rustam Khabilov, knocked out Kyle Nelson, knocked out Jared Gordon, and then beat Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And his last loss was to Dustin Poirier. But that was way back in 2015, so 6 years ago. Got knocked out by Poirier. That was the last time he lost and the only time he's been finished. No shame in that. I might change my pick for the sleeper fight, Jeff. I'm really liking this fight right now. What do you think?
Yeah, dude, this fight sounds great. Bill, I'll make this my sleeper fight. That way we get both in there. But yeah, dude, Ferreira, that's quite a list for him as well, man. And Dariush, he's been spectacular, dude. I still remember that close fight. Pun intended. But yeah, dude. Yeah, great list of contenders that both of these guys have beat, and they've been able to string together some really good performances. This could shake up the rankings a little bit in the top 10, I think, at lightweight. So this will be really interesting to watch, man. If somebody can get a spectacular finish here, that'd be awesome.
Are these guys in the top 10?
I don't think so. Dariush might be. But
Dariush probably top 15. Ferreira might be top 15 as well. Man, this division is so stacked. You have these two guys 5 and 6 fight win streaks, and we don't even know if they're ranked.
Yeah,
this
man,
is crazy.
Yeah.
And then we got Michael Johnson and Clay Guida. That's a really fun fucking fight.
Yeah, the ageless Clay Guida.
Yeah, dude. Who other than Clay Guida has been able to keep up like that style where he just like puts a pace on guys, which I think is going to be a problem for Michael Johnson, because Michael Johnson is notorious for like winning the early parts of fights. And then like when one thing goes wrong for him, everything goes wrong. And if one thing goes wrong against Clay Guida, he's going to be all over you. Like there's just no stopping that guy. He's relentless. He's like a toddler on crack.
Oh man, yeah, dude. I mean, they're tough enough without it, man. So yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna just it took us longer to get through this than I expected, so I'm gonna give you the rest of the card, Jeff. You tell me what jumps off the page to you. We got Mike Rodriguez and Danilo Marques. We got Martin Day against Timur Valiev. We got Devonte Smith on this card, but as of right now, as of this moment, according to Sherdog, he does not have an opponent. Jocelyn Edwards against Carol Rosa. Molly McCann against Lara Fritzen Procopio. And then Sang-Woon Choi against Youssef Zalal. And O'Day Osborne against Dennis Bondar. So anything jumping off the page to you, Jeff?
I'll be honest with you. I don't know too many of the fighters in the remainder of the card. I've heard of Molly McCann, but I don't know too much about her. The Mike Rodriguez versus Danilo Marques fight looks really interesting. That's at light heavyweight. So yeah, chance for one of these guys to make a name for themselves. Light heavyweight division a little bit in flux since Jan Blachowicz won the championship. We don't really have too many contenders for him. In fact, the only contender we have for him who's fighting for the title next is the champion from the middleweight division. So good chance for the light heavyweights here.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. I don't know why, but I feel like the Sang-Woo Choi fight against Youssef Zalal is going to be an explosive one. I feel like that's going to be a good one. And it's right at the beginning of the card. I'm excited for this whole card, Jeff. I kind of like this pacing, like 1 week on, 1 week off. Like that kind of works for me. I don't like having like the long stretch with no fights, but I also don't like feeling obligated to watch fights every week. I know it sounds like such a shitty thing to say because, this is what I do, but at the same time, it's like, like every now and then I want to do something else on a Saturday night. It's kind of nice. Like you have that break, maybe like one weekend a month off would be good.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I don't totally hate it either, especially like this weekend, Bill. In my school district, the marking period or the first semester of the year, I guess you could say, actually ends on Monday. So I've been kind of just getting some work done, putting some final grades in this weekend. So to have that time off and not have to worry about, um, you know, catching not missing this fight card, it was nice. I was able to get some work done. I'm ready to go for Monday. So I got all of tomorrow and the rest of tonight to kind of just hang out and think about the card next weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this one will be back at the UFC Apex. So I don't think there's going to be any weird timing or anything like that. Should be like regular timing schedule. Hopefully it's one of these earlier ones where the main card starts at like 9, 8 o'clock. Those are my favorites.
Yeah,
Like
those
those.
are nice. I mean, dude, that fight card last weekend, I was so used to going to bed early that I was fading.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely woke up when Michael Chandler won his fight, but man,
Oh yeah, that's true. We haven't even gotten your take on UFC 257. So, what were your big takeaways from that? The listeners have been dying to know.
oh dude, I thought Michael Chandler was absolutely amazing in his UFC debut. Um, excuse me. And I was telling my friend who doesn't know about Michael Chandler, he's like, "Yo, that dude was crazy." I was like, "Yeah," but I was like, "Here, I'm gonna send you some highlight videos from his time in Bellator because this guy is the real deal. Like this guy puts people away. But yeah, I loved it. I loved the promo at the end. Going with the Ric Flair thing. I know you weren't a big fan of it, Bill, but I thought it was respectful to Khabib, but also like kind of let him know, I'm here. I think that'd be an awesome fight for Khabib to kind of ride off into the sunset, win or lose. I think that's a great fight. Um, and I was really impressed with Dustin Poirier, man. Um, being able to stifle Connor with those calf kicks, especially in that second round when he went for the finish. Connor McGregor. So the untrained eye, it looked like Connor was just standing there as a punching bag, eating all this damage. But the problem was he couldn't get away, man. That leg was done at that point. So his mobility was compromised in a very, very big way. So I thought that Justin Poirier, I thought the strategy was awesome, especially because it looked like he was going to get finished in that first round, man. Connor hit him with some really tough shots. And it was refreshing to see a little bit less smack talk. It was refreshing, leading up to the fight. And it was refreshing to see Connor, take it in stride and say, hey, you know, I definitely got to get active again. Because, Bill, we've seen it 100 million times at this point. You don't get, like Chael Sonnen says, you don't get better at something by not doing it. And, fighting once a year, obviously is taking its toll on Connor. And he said he kind of wants to fight 3 or 4 times this year. So I'd love to see him recover a little bit and then get back in that cage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that Conor McGregor has been knocked as far down the ladder as people have been making it out to be? Because a lot of people have been saying like, this is it. This is his downfall. I think he's 3-3 in his last 6 fights, something like that. How are you seeing the future for Conor as far as like his ability to compete in this division?
No, I don't feel that way at all, actually. I think Connor's a huge draw. I'm not his biggest fan. I'll be the first to tell you that. But my ass is gonna be in a seat to watch him fight. I think the money is a big deal. I think that's very attractive to him as well, as it would be for anybody. And two, no, I don't think he's done by any means. Um, I think Dustin Poirier was just more ready for Connor than Connor was for him. I think that part of the reason Connor lost is because he already beat him 6 years ago, and he really has not had to improve in those 6 years. He knocked out Jose Aldo in 14 seconds. He didn't have to change too much in his game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he had a few losses along the way. Lost to um, uh, Nate
Nate
Diaz.
Diaz.
but was able to come back and beat him. So we've seen Conor bounce back. We've seen him go back to the drawing board and change things and change strategies when he's needed to. So I really don't think that Conor's done by any means. I think this is kind of gonna light a fire under his ass, actually, because this is the first time he's gotten knocked out, and I imagine he hates that. As much as cool and calm as he was, I think that he definitely like when he goes back, he's kind of gonna get pissed off and go back in the gym and train.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because he is a competitor. We've never really seen him fall into the same trap twice. And, a lot of people might say like, well, he got rear naked choked by Nate Diaz and he got rear naked choked by Khabib. Those are two different scenarios. In the Nate Diaz fight, he got rocked first. He dove in for the takedown, was kind of out of it, and then got choked out. In the Khabib fight, he got out grappled. I think it was concerning that he came out in a boxing stance against Poirier. It was paying off at first because he was, a little bit quicker to the punch, so to speak. But in a boxing stance, you're heavier on that lead leg, which is going to cause more damage on the calf kicks, as I talked about last week. So I think he was thinking too much about his next move, like making that transition back to boxing. I think he wanted to sell this. He really wanted to market his boxing skills in this fight. That's what he's trying to do instead of trying to win the fight. As far as his skills, I think he can definitely still be competitive, but there's a lot of bad matchups for him at the top of this division. Michael Chandler is a nightmare matchup for him because he's a fucking animal of a wrestler with crazy knockout power. Justin Gaethje is a nightmare of a matchup for him because he's got that forward pressure. He's hard to knock out. He's hard to put away, and he's got those nasty leg kicks. Obviously, Dustin Poirier is a bad matchup for him. Poirier could be a bad matchup for anybody on any given night. Excuse me. Charles Oliveira is a bad matchup for him because of the grappling and the wild striking. He'll throw anything to get inside and get it to the ground. And obviously, he's one of the best grapplers to ever do the sport. Barring his last two fights, I would say Tony Ferguson is a nightmare matchup for Conor McGregor. I don't know how strongly I feel about that now. Style, before the Justin Gaethje fight, and put it against the Conor McGregor we saw against Dustin Poirier. That's a nightmare of a matchup. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he's gonna really go back to the drawing board and come up with a good game plan and come up with a good opponent that makes sense for him, which will probably be Nate Diaz. I feel like this is the time to do that trilogy. Poirier will probably go on. If he doesn't turn a fight quick, he may get put on the shelf. But if he does turn around quick, then he'll probably be fighting for the title. And then, there's the possibility for the McGregor Poirier trilogy down the line, and we get to see that rubber match. Any other takeaways from 257 you wanted to get off your chest?
Not at the moment, just because I don't have the card in front of me. Those are really the two things that stood out to me. But overall, it was a really solid card. I remember enjoying it. Even though I was running a fever, I was able to take a little nap before the card, and I was really, really enjoying it, especially the main card.
Well, I'm sure everyone listening is glad to have you back a little bit healthier, not 100%, but still sounding good. We thought this was going to be a quick episode, Jeff. We're like, how are we going to drag this one out? And we wound up going longer than we normally go. That's just that's just the way it works out sometimes. Is there anything else you wanted to get off your chest, be it MMA related or not?
Oh, man.
Super Bowl related. You got a Super Bowl prediction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I'll be honest with you. I think it's gonna be the Kansas City Chiefs, but in my heart of hearts, I want it to be Tom Brady, Bill. But the Tampa Bay's defense. I feel like Tampa Bay's defense really got him out of trouble last weekend, because he threw 3 picks in the second half, which I think if it weren't for his defense, we'd be having a different conversation
Mhm.
about who's going to the Super Bowl this upcoming weekend. But dude, what I really wanted to get into was those cards in March that were announced last weekend, which look fantastic. But Bill, we have plenty of time for those.
Yeah, there was some mix-ups in those as well because the Dominic Reyes Yuri Prochaska fight got called off, and has been replaced with a heavyweight matchup between Jairzinho Rosenstruik and someone else that's escaping me right now. But as far as the Super Bowl goes, I'm good either way. I could jump on the bandwagon and root for the home team and hope the Bucks pull it off. But one of my close family friends, John Rogers, who passed away a few years ago, was a lifelong Kansas City Chiefs fan. And I know they just won a championship, but if they win another one, and that's something that could have put a smile on his face, I'll be happy about that as well. So, the part of me that lives in Tampa Bay, like, sure, let's go home team. And then, the part of me that always remembers my dear family friend, will say we'll be happy for the Chiefs if they win as well. So I hope everybody has a good time watching the Super Bowl. Hope everybody has a good time watching UFC Fight Night 184 from the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov. And, I hope everybody continues to stay safe, whether you're getting a vaccine or you're, wearing a mask all the time, whatever you're doing to keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, keep everybody around you, the elderly community safe. I hope everybody is doing that. Once again, a shout out to our friends over at Team Reaper. If you want to get a hold of an MMA on the Rocks t-shirt, hoodie, or tank top. So again, I'm blown away. I don't even have a MMA on the Rocks tank top, Jeff. So if you want to own one before me, head over to reaper1.co. I'll put the link in the show notes for everything. I got to make a link for the tank top now too, because I always put a link for the t-shirt, for the sweatshirt. I got to make one for the tank top now as well. Use the promo code MMA Rocks 10. That's MMA ROCKS 10. And save yourself some money. Get yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a tank top. It says over the top, under the influence. If that's not your style, you can still use the promo code for anything else on the website. Get some MMA gear, training gloves. Get yourself a Team Reaper gi. They're making rash guards now. They're really coming along, Jeff. They, within their first year, they signed 50 fighters. And the owner, Ryan, who I talked to sporadically, he's got some lofty goals and he's really dedicated to them. He wants to have 200 fighters by Labor Day. I think that's the goal. I got to go back and double check that, but he's really getting after it, recruiting fighters, and they treat the fighters really well. They give them a big cut of their t-shirt sales. Whatever the fighters sell, they're giving a lot of that money to them, which is so important, especially these amateur and local circuit fighters. They got to pay, to eat healthy. They got to pay coaches. Sometimes they practically have to pay to be on a fight card. So it's always good to support those men and women who are looking to break into the sport. That's all I got, Jeff. So next week we'll be back to break down UFC Fight Night 184. And, we'll talk about some other fun stuff. Don't forget Henry McKenna, 10-year. If you see it for under $60, grab a bottle of that. It is quite delicious. And that's all we got. So until next time, cheers, everybody.